So, on behalf of Knowledge, I'd like to welcome you, Mr. Surya. It's a pleasure to have this interaction with you on the topic of learning and development. And I'm so looking forward to hearing more about all your experiences and the corporate expertise that you carry and what we can learn from it. Introducing Surya Prakash Mohapatra. He's currently the global head talent transformation at Wipro BPS. He comes with over 20 plus years of experience in various leadership roles in several leading IT and ITS organizations. Prior to Wipro, he worked in HP, Microland, First Rank. These are just a few names of the number of brands he's worked with. He also has an extensive experience in setting up and running learning and development functions for organizations not just in India but globally. Surya set up the global training function for Wipro, which span across 10 different locations, including Brazil, Mexico, Romania, Poland, China, and India. Clearly, he's led quite a few leadership development and capability building roles in various organizations. He was instrumental in setting up the Management Academy and Domain Gurukul in Wipro as well. He brings with him vast experience in setting up knowledge centers of excellence in various domains, defining and implementing training modules for rural BPO, tier 3 BPOs, etc. In his current role, he engages in evolving strategies for learning and development, talent management, knowledge management for the organization in India. In the past, he's played a key role in setting up the training function in HPGPS. He was also one of the key contributors to HP's Charisma program at the global lead for the training tower. Welcome, Surya. Like I said, this is very exciting, and I'm looking forward to learning a lot about learning and development and its importance, because there are two aspects to it. One is the learning and development, which is important for the companies, and learning and development, which is important just for us as individuals. So we look forward to this candid conversation with you around this.
Thank you so much, Shruti. Thank you for this opportunity. I'm also looking forward to this conversation.
That is great. So I think to begin with, I want to start with a quote which is said by J.I. Joe, which says, "Knowing is half the battle." Right? And I think that quote makes a lot of sense, and it has a lot of meaning, because anything that we know about is, that's probably half. Like the quote says, it's half the battle to actually achieving something and moving forward. But what I find most interesting about you, Mr. Surya, and the little that I've read about you and know of you, I think learning and development along with spirituality is a great combination to have. And I know, and I've read that you're also a very spiritual person. Would you want to start off talking about that? And because I personally think it's a great combination to have.
Thank you so much. Thank you for calling me a spiritual person. I believe that everybody is spiritual. The word spiritual has the word spirit inside it. Spirit is our soul, is our existence, is our consciousness. So everybody has existence, everybody has consciousness. So in that sense, everybody is spiritual.
Yeah.
Sometimes the thoughts and then the feelings and emotions are strong, and sometimes we probably ignore it, and then it gets covered by something else, and then something else takes the precedence or priority. But I think essentially, deep inside, all of us are spiritual, and spirituality takes us to the cause of everything. And once you're connected with the cause, there is great sense of satisfaction, happiness, because you seem to be getting into the grip of things. Because if you know the cause, then you know how to address it, how to control it, how to take charge. So that helps you being in control. So spirituality actually helps us to be in control of our own personal life, our own surroundings around us, our profession, every aspects of our life.
Absolutely.
the combination about learning and development, a combination of learning and development and spirituality, you are right. It's a good combination, because learning and development helps us, um, sometimes look at that cause, understand that, and then also uh, reflect on the cause, and then think about the way forward.
Right. So how much of spirituality and the learnings from there have you put into your career as an L&D head, or just in general? I'm sure that that perspective of yours has also given you a lot of ideologies in terms of the actual execution of learning and development in the organizations.
Right. I think spirituality actually brings the other person, the recipient of your services, at the center stage.
Right.
Um, Oftentimes, business leaders go after outcomes and results. But if you're strongly inclined towards spirituality, as a business leader, you put your stakeholders, the recipients of your services, at the center. That's what the modern business experts are also talking about. Concepts like design thinking, etc.,
Yeah.
are talking about the same thing. So for me, as a learning and development professional, it's the learner who is at the center of things.
Of course.
What does the learner need? What are the needs? What are the expectations? What are the pain points? Similarly, putting the stakeholder at the center.
Yeah.
What are his or her priorities? What's the pain areas for the stakeholder? And that's where you begin. So that's where spirituality helps, because spirituality teaches you empathy, compassion, love. So I think this is really helpful, and I think spirituality, the relevance of spirituality in business, is more than ever before.
Absolutely. I mean, the reason I decided to start off the conversation on this note is because, we often get misled with the concepts of spirituality and being religious. It's always confusing unless you actually deep dive into it to understand the kind of impact it has on our lives. Right. And some things that I absolutely accept, just as a person. I mean, I consider myself also partly spiritual, maybe not that I should be, but things which I is how we obviously become empathetic, we become more we become more kind, and I think these are the least qualities one requires to be successful in career as well. We've got emotions which actually help us get to where we want to be. I think that, and I the point where you said that spirituality brings in a lot of discipline, not just in lifestyle, but also in life in general. And I think that's what leads us to actually doing what we are supposed to do. So that is great. I mean, and when business leaders like you, uh, simple things like this, I think there's an automatic hope that's created when someone is looking up to you and says that one day even I want to be there. You know that these are your secret small mantras that you follow. It will So I was saying that these are such small, simple things that we follow, that you follow, and some things I relate to are, of course, being more empathetic, compassionate, being kind. I think these are little elements that business leaders bring into the space, which actually makes the workplace better to be in. And when we, as individuals, look at business leaders like you who follow these simple steps to get to where you are in your professional lives and your personal lives, it automatically increases confidence and hope that, okay, by following this, probably is where we can do things right for ourselves and where we can actually improve our lives for the better.
Thank you so much.
So that is the reason I decided to start off this conversation on this note. And and I think that's a good base to understanding you better and your perspective better. So diving into the topic for today, which is about learning and development in general. So we're talking about learning and development as an HR function, as a function which is given the most importance in the last few years. And you personally have been a part of this transformation of learning and development being established and set up in a lot of these large companies. So I would want to hear from you about how the journey has been and what, according to you, is learning and development and why is it important?
So, if you're asking about my journey, I think it has been absolutely enriching as a journey. And this has been a great learning journey for myself. And fortunately, being in learning and development space, I think the journey has been even more fulfilling. As I started the journey about a couple of decades ago, um, those days this function used to be called training function. And today it is called the learning function or the learning and development function.
Yeah.
And that signifies, that really talks about the major shift that has happened. The shift has happened from training, from trainer, instructor to learning and the learner. And that has been the major shift. This function used to be a subset of HR, but today it's a very highly specialized function. Of course, it works very closely with HR because both the functions deal with people, but it's a very highly specialized function where you need specialists to run this function. Other interesting developments that I have seen over the years are the environment around us, the changes that have happened in the industry, automation, robotics, artificial intelligence, etc., have changed the way we do business. We deal with people. We talk to our customers. Even we manage our day-to-day personal and social lives. That has impacted our personal, social, professional lives. Creative destructions of organizations and products. As you know that in 1955 we had 500 organizations in the Fortune 500 list. Today, only 11% of those organizations exist in that list. So 89% of those Fortune 500 companies have disappeared from the list. So it's largely because creative destruction of organizations and products. New organizations have emerged, and they have come up with new ideas, new concepts, new products, and some of those have emerged at the cost of organizations that existed in the past, products and solutions that existed in the past. Customer expectations have evolved, and all that has really impacted learning and development. Learning and development has really been given the responsibility, or businesses and organizations have expected them to help organizations stay ahead of the curve. If an organization does not stay ahead of the curve, then the organization cannot survive. So how can we really help organizations and the workforce stay ahead of the curve by learning new technologies, new business models, a new way of doing things, and so on. Another important trend that we have seen is the emergence of the new learner, the millennials.
Yeah.
Their expectations have evolved. It's very different from the learners in the previous generations. Gen X and baby boomers, they learn very differently. The Gen Y, the Gen G learn very, very differently. Their expectations are very different. Today, they want to be involved in the learning design process. They want to learn on the go. They really want to leverage technology to a great extent to learn. Their attention span is very short. Unless you do something very different, interesting, engaging, you just lose their attention uh, you know, researchers have said the attention span today is less than 7 minutes. So it's a huge challenge for learning and development practitioners to figure out what they should do differently to grab the attention of this new age learners and retain the attention. So all these developments, I think largely what's happening in the industry and technology coming up as a huge disruption and the learning styles, tastes, and preferences of the new age learner being very different. All of these have really impacted learning and development as a function. That has led to the transformation. So today, this function is different in the sense today this function acknowledges that no longer the trainer or the facilitator is at the center. It's the learner who is at the center. Today, we also acknowledge the fact that we are here to not just to create content, but we are also here to create learner experience. We are here to design learner experience. So on one hand, we'll have to meet the business objectives, business outcomes, build organizational capability for today and tomorrow. On the other hand, you also have to make sure that your content, your learning solutions are engaging, they're interesting, they're relevant. It's fun. You provide a very positive experience to the learner, and so the learning and development practitioner today has to do the balancing act, manage all of this, and make sure we drive outcomes and also experience at the same time.
Very true. I think, I mean, relating to this, I think the millennials, which is where I myself belong, I think we learn from experiences. Like even every learning that we have is an experience now. And going back to my favorite theme of this conversation, which is spirituality and learning and development, the perspective. Spirituality talks about experience and how an experience can make a difference. And I think that's the same thing that applies here, right? It's kind of good to see the way, like you said, moving from a trainer to a learner. And at this point, I think during the times that we currently are in, there's absolutely no age for learning. I remember when my dad used to work in a bank, when they got computers into banks for the first time, that was such a shift for them in the way they used to do things versus how they had to do things after computers came in picture. But that felt more like a forced training that was given to people at that point. But now I think we go through changes pretty much every day, but learning just has become part of our life, and learning has become a very integral part of our life, without which
Yeah.
absolutely no moving forward. What is your thought about how, I mean, we're talking more in terms of B2B right now. We're talking more in terms of business perspective right now. With the number of startups which have come in, generally it's a notion that learning and development is a vertical only in the large companies, like Wipros, like HPs, like GE Healthcare. But then I believe that even in startups, there is learning and development that happens, maybe not in the same term as the way it is in large companies, but it's still a very prominent function. So what are your thoughts about L&D as a vertical in startups or smaller companies? Uh, and how that can be established as a function?
Right. I think that's a good question. It's the human nature to become adventurous, to be inquisitive, to learn more. So we can't, in any case, influence that natural appetite that human beings have towards learning. So learning happens everywhere, whether it's a large organization or as a startup. Our role as learning and development practitioners is to facilitate learning, is to accelerate, is to create the right ecosystem, which should not come in the way. We should rather accelerate, we should facilitate, we should support. I think that's our role. And today, in today's time, where the learner is at the center stage and the learner is supposedly taking charge of his or her learning, our role has become that of a facilitator, as I said. So it really doesn't make a difference whether you are talking about a large organization or a startup. Learning is going to happen. It will happen. Whether you make that happen, whether you facilitate that or not, it's going to happen. People are going to figure out how to learn. With learning becoming, or with content becoming democratized today, with content being freely available and accessible, it has become even more, it has become easier than before. So in the good old days, people used to go to a library to read books, or they if they could not afford to buy an expensive book, they used to go to a library, become a member of a library, and then go there and read. But today, content is available freely. It's accessible.
And in excess, actually, there's more information than required.
It's a problem of plenty, as you said. Yes, it's a problem of plenty. So that's a bigger problem. So I think if you're talking about a startup in particular, I think it's a lot easier today as an L&D practitioner. If one is an L&D practitioner in a startup, all that you need to do is figure out what your employees need and try and see how you can curate that content, because that content is available anyways. But the difficulty or the challenge for the employees is to find out what content is relevant and what is not. Because when they see the cognitive overload of information, they really have to figure out, because if you just type one keyword in the Google search, you just find millions of results. So the challenge for you is to figure out which is the one that is relevant for you. So I think as L&D professionals, our role is to curate content and direct people to the right content, which is relevant to them. About a few years ago, when I was working in my previous organization, Hewlett Packard, I was in Netherlands participating in a HR conference. I was talking about the new age learning tools. And after I finished my talk, a lady from one of the countries in Europe who was participating in that conference stood up and said, "Surya, you come from a large organization. You have the money, you have the resources to invest in these tools. I come from a medium-sized organization. We don't have the money." So I said, "What is your objective? What do you need? Let's talk about money later."
Right.
She said, "Knowledge dissemination, knowledge sharing. I want to create a culture of learning in my organization." I said, "It's simple. Do you have a website of your company?" She said, "Yes." I said, "Do you have some internal portals where you share information with your employees?" She said, "Yes, we do. We use SharePoint." I said, "Fantastic. Then you have the tools. Do your people use mobile phones?" She said, "Yes." Do they use smartphones with cameras?" She said, "Yes." I said, "Just ask them to create video blogs. They can create a 2-minute, 3-minute video and upload it to your SharePoint. Ask them to write blogs. Ask them to create presentations. Create a small community of practice within your organization." I told her, "Don't worry about the tools. It's your need that should drive your tools, not the other way around. Our tools should not drive our needs."
Yeah.
If you figure out what your need is, it's simple. You can then figure out what you need to do.
Absolutely. I mean, tools should rather be a solution and not be another problem, or not be another bit to say that, okay, how do I deal with this now? It should rather make it easier. It's like often we get confused whether mobile phones have made our lives better, or have mobiles made our life not so good, right? It's all about how we use it, and how we remain disciplined with its usage. It's similar.
Yeah,
Yeah. So
absolutely.
so from what you say, I take it that once one understands what is learning as a term, and whether it's a company, whether it's an individual, once we understand the importance of learning and development and the simple things that one needs to do to learn and develop themselves, I think that's the starting point to a lot of small steps which can lead to bigger results. And it's not the other way. It's not that we look at bigger results and say, okay, it seems like really hard to get there. How do we get there? It's about the little steps we take along the process. Is that right, Surya?
Oh, yes, yes. How to get there and where to get there. Today, in today's times, it's very difficult to have a long-term career plan.
Yeah.
Of course, it's good to have some destination, some broad vision for yourself, but you may have to change your career plan so many times in your career,
I mean, you touched
because
upon, yeah, sorry.
the role that you have envisioned for yourself may not exist tomorrow. So it's so dynamic today.
Yeah.
So while it's good to have a vision and a long-term plan, I think what's more important for a professional is not to think about a designation or a title or a position that one can aspire for, but I think what's important is to define a purpose in life.
Wow. Yeah.
Purpose will take you far in life. But if I say I want to see myself as the CEO of this company in 10 years, or a vice president in next 5 years, then I'm chasing titles and positions, and it may not take me far. But if I have a purpose, I would come up with a technology which will make people's life simpler. It'll solve a problem, a health problem. It'll solve a business problem. It'll eradicate social stigma. If you have a purpose, uh, like when Bill Gates started Microsoft, he did not. His goal was not to become the richest man in the world.
Of course.
He had a purpose. His purpose was to um, make a software which the common man can use. He wanted to simplify software so much that everybody can use computers. Before the Windows suite of products came, software used to be so complex.
Yeah.
So he had a purpose. He became the richest man in the world is only incidental. It's a different matter.
Correct. Absolutely. Absolutely. I think, yeah, I mean, I was going to say that you touched upon such an important point because uh, two things. One is when we talk about professional careers, you don't know where you're going to be in the next 6 months because there's so much opportunity in the world today that it feels like we should not restrict ourselves to one bit. I mean, marketing as a function was probably just marketing before, but now there are different kinds of marketing. For example, there is
Right.
digital, there is offline, there is content marketing, and there are so many different kinds that you don't want to restrict yourself. And at the same time, gone are the days when we were told to do a certain bachelor's course, for example, do your engineering and settle down in a job. But then the number of people we see today who've actually done engineering, but who are not doing jobs related to their study,
Right.
it's no longer surprising because it's a good to have degree, but ultimately what you find your passion and interest in is something we figure out over time, over a period of few years.
Right.
I think that's definitely a very, very important point. And when it comes to, the other aspect that you said about startups versus larger organizations, even if you talk about startups, the business models and the business projections, I think during the Reliance days, we used to talk about 30 years, 50 years family businesses, but now it's about what is your 6 month plan, what is your 1 year plan. Like there is
Right.
no way we can think beyond that because you don't know how technology is going to change,
Right.
right? And you brought about Bill Gates, which reminded me about a line which Steve Jobs says that if we read about him, it actually is that he is not an expert in building software, but he's found experts to build that for him. So he's a visionary who has a certain idea and certain vision for his product and his company, and he finds the best talent who can help him execute, right? And I
Right.
thought that's a very strong perspective because we always are taught to be the best, do the best, but sometimes it's okay to accept that I am not the best for this. Let me find someone who can make this vision come true, right?
Absolutely.
And that again goes back to learning and development and saying that how companies should realize that a company is made of people, of course, and the more you empower them, the better it is for the company overall. And that's where perhaps learning and development plays a very crucial role.
Absolutely.
Right. So this is great insight from the B2B, from the business perspective, from the employee's perspective, or from the individual's perspective. I just have a small write-up on a report which says, according to a 2016 Gallup report, it says it is believed that 87% of millennials say that learning and development in the workplace is most important for them. And 59% of millennials say that having opportunities to learn and grow are extremely important when they decide whether they should apply to a job or not. Right? I mean, for me, it doesn't seem surprising, but I would like to hear your thoughts about it. But there is also a continuation to that, which says by 2025, millennials will make up 50% of the workforce. And by 2030, 75% of the workforce will be comprised of millennials. And these figures makes us realize that it's important to work the millennial way now, and it's important to accept that there is a shift in the way millennials learn, exactly the way you mentioned. What are your thoughts about this? So.
Absolutely. I think talking about millennials, we briefly discussed this a few minutes ago. So they have very different sets of expectations. And then we as L&D practitioners really need to figure out, how do we address that? How do we understand them first before we really plan out something for them? Oftentimes, like most parents believe that they understand their teenage children and they understand what is good for them, but the teenage children think very differently. They believe their parents don't understand them.
Yeah.
So similarly, most Gen X leaders believe that they understand what is good for their millennial talent.
Yeah.
But in reality, they don't. So first of all, the most important thing they should do is they should involve them in the learning design process. They should find out from them what is their expectation, what do they need, what are their likes and dislikes, what role they can play in the learning process. I think that's the important starting point. They need to start by talking to them, engaging with them, finding out from them what are their expectations. The Gen X leaders need to invest time in understanding the learning styles and preferences of millennials. The styles that worked with them, the techniques that worked with them in the past may not work with this generation. They need to understand that. And a few other things, leveraging technology. And the millennial generation, which is very technology savvy, can be involved in the content design process because they can bring in a lot of interesting perspectives. Today, design thinking principles tell you that involve your customer in the design process. When you're designing a solution for your customer, involve your customer in that process. So when you're designing learning solutions for your millennials, why don't you involve them? Because they know more about technology than we do. Another important thing that I have been noticing today, because most people use smartphones, and then today we are used to getting information, getting notifications. Today, we are living in an era where information reaches out to us, information finds us. So so the millennial today has a very similar expectation. Can learning content find me instead of me going out and then looking for learning content? Can learning solutions find me? Can I get notifications that, hey, we understood your profile, your background, your interests. We think this learning program will be interesting for you, relevant for you. So instead of me going out and then trying to find out. So these are interesting developments which are happening today. And we need to be cognizant of these developments and then start redesigning, re-strategizing, reimagining our interventions, keeping all these new developments in mind if we want to be effective.
Absolutely. I mean, do you also believe that hiring is more difficult and more of an investment than employee retention, and that L&D is a way to retain their best employees in the organization.
Absolutely. You just spend so much money, time, and effort in hiring a person, and the time that you spend to bring that person up to speed with the company culture, with his or her role, expectations of the customer, etc. Why not retain your employees? And retention is one thing, but keeping them engaged is another thing, so that they can give their best to the organization.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I think the last bit for today, for today's conversation, which I'd want to end, is with the whole COVID-19 era, with the way things are today as we speak. We see that the world has changed very differently. I mean, it suddenly feels like 6 months ago things were so different from what they are today, including what we're doing now with this discussion. We're doing it digitally, virtually. Probably in a normal scenario, we would have met at your office or at our office to record this and make it more in-person conversation. But so clearly, upskilling and edutech an industry has taken a very different shape during this time, uh, and of course, we at Knowledge Hub also take pride in the kind of courses we offer, and we've seen a sudden jump in the number of people who are consuming courses, quality courses through us, and similarly through other edtech players as well. So how and what, according to you, is the most important in terms of upskilling, and not necessary that people should depend on the company to get them to upskill or to learn something, and how employees themselves should voluntarily look for courses depending on what their career objectives are. So what are your suggestions for the millennials? Because I think that's where most of your suggestions will be uh, directed towards. What are your suggestions for the millennials to say that upskilling is important, and how you should go about setting goals for yourselves, for your career, and also find courses from the edtech players?
So you started with COVID-19. You made a reference to COVID-19. So COVID-19 actually has made us challenge many of our paradigms.
Mm-hmm.
So many of the things we believed are not possible are possible today. So it has challenged many paradigms. It has also proved to us that human beings are highly adaptable, flexible, and they're resilient. They can bounce back in the midst of the most severe crisis. It has also told us that crisis can just come from nowhere, out of the blue, and they can hit you badly with very widespread ramifications.
Yeah.
This has also told us about the importance of staying ahead of the curve and continuously upskilling ourselves, preparing ourselves for the future, for a future which is unknown,
Yeah.
which is not known to us.
Yeah.
So that could be another black swan event like COVID-19, and we have no idea when will that come and what would be its ramifications. What would the future look like after that?
Yeah.
If we believe that this is the last, such event that occurred, then we are definitely mistaken. So all of us now understand the importance of upskilling ourselves. But the challenge is understanding what do I need to upskill myself on. And when I'm talking about upskilling for the future, it's a bigger challenge because I don't know what the future holds for me. But having said that, in spite of the uncertainty and the volatility and the complexity, ambiguity, as we call the VUCA world, it's important that we prepare ourselves for the future, for the foreseeable future and for the unforeseeable future. And it is important that we upskill ourselves on 3 different areas. The 3 areas are mindset and skill set and the tool set. So mindset is the most important one.
Yes.
That would remain consistent. The fact that we have to become fearless, we have to become adaptable, we have to become more flexible, we have to be prepared for an unknown future, we have to be prepared for the worst case scenario. These would remain. Our ability to deal with change. So this mindset attributes would remain consistent forever. While the future is going to change, we need to remain adaptable. We always need to remain flexible. We always need to remain fearless. We always need to be willing to experiment, try out different things, and so on. Skills, some skills are known, some are unknown. So problem solving skills, negotiation skills, influencing skills, persuasion skills, those skills will always remain relevant. They remain relevant in the past. Before this crisis, before COVID-19, we needed to have persuasive skills, influencing skills, negotiation skills. We'll need them tomorrow as well. There are some skills which we don't know whether they would remain relevant. Technology. The technology that we learn today will not remain relevant tomorrow.
Right.
But we can't stop learning this because the technology is going to change. So we have to keep pace with the change. So we have to keep learning new technologies. The good news is every new technology will come on top of the old technology. So it's going to be incremental. So if you're always up to date, it's just about it's a matter of upgrading to the new technology.
It's a stepping stone in that sense.
The stepping stone. So I think in that sense, it's important. And the third aspect is the tool set. What tools that we need to become successful. And when I talk about tools, some of these are actually technology tools, some of them are business tools, some of them are tools driven by some of those practices, whether it is Six Sigma, quality, design thinking. But we would need those tools and stay up to date, project management, etc. We need to be up to date with those tools. So we need the right skills, the right mindset, and the right tools. And we constantly need to upskill ourselves. If we don't do that, there is going to be a big question mark on our existence in the industry, in our profession. There's going to be a big question mark on our career.
Right. I think that's a great takeaway. Mindset, skill set, and tool set. I think that's my biggest takeaway, because of course everything begins with our mind and the mindset that we put ourselves into. Without which, no matter how much we discuss, unless it starts from here, there's nothing we can do about it. So of course that's the most.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, because a crisis like this sometimes makes you believe that you have reached the end of the road, and there is no light.
We never know, this could actually be a start to greater things ahead. It's like we were all moving in a certain pace in life, and we were moving in a certain flow in life until now. But 2020 suddenly seems like everything is on a halt and everything is on a pause. We never know what is in store in the next few years. But the more, so it's, the reason I like the point, what you said about mindset, is because every situation there is a learning. Again, going back to a bit of spirituality and concepts around spirituality, there is a bit of learning, and the faster we learn, the more we grow. And I think that is where mindset plays a very important role. Like the COVID-19 situation, of course, we feel empathetic to a lot of problems which are out there in the world, but we're not going to solve anything by sitting and feeling bad about what is happening or feeling stressed about what is happening. Rather, we should probably use this as the best time to learn whatever we can, because we have all the time, that's possible to learn and upgrade ourselves. And there's enough, like we discussed, there's so much information out there. It's just a matter of being disciplined and saying that this is how I'll spend time during this dull period, and that's what it is.
I'm really glad that you brought in spirituality again in the end, because that's where really helps a business leader. Just imagine, I'm not going to take names, but all of us know that very successful business leaders have just given up. Some of them have committed suicide
Yeah.
just because they know that they believe that they have reached the end. There is no hope after this. But spirituality really helps at this point in time, because spirituality makes you very strongly determined, and spirituality teaches you not to give up. And spirituality, um, interestingly, that never makes you feel attached.
Right.
But it's very difficult to imagine something in a business world you are not attached. You need to be attached to material things, because that's what we have been taught right from our childhood.
Yeah.
But the moment you're attached, that's where the problem starts. Because if you lose them, it's just your attachment makes you feel so miserable. But if you are detached, and spirituality teaches you to be detached,
Yeah.
and if you're detached, it doesn't really impact you, because but that doesn't tell you that you'll have to go to the forest and become a saint and do meditation there. But spirituality teaches you that hey, even if you've lost everything, you can start all over again from the scratch.
Yeah, I mean, purpose, as long as the purpose, like you said, is clear, nothing really matters. I mean, when we see some of the successful business leaders, commit suicide or end for reasons that they believe is the end of the road for them, it bothers, because when you look at the other side, these are the same leaders who've impacted so many people's lives in a good way,
Yes,
which seems to be not noticed enough by people or by themselves. And yeah, and
absolutely.
I want to sort of bring this conversation by saying that the definition of success is so subjective that it varies from person to person. I mean, for someone with clear purpose in life, success could be as simple as impacting 2-3 lives around them by giving them jobs or by giving them an opportunity to learn. Whereas for some, success could be materialistic and say that I want to be $1 billion worth individual. So it is, I mean, these are great things which we also learn from kids, um, for whom success is just about completing their homework for the day and being happy about it. And
Right.
for a kid, it's about being able to complete your homework and convince parents that they can get 1 hour free playtime. So at every stage, the definition of success progresses, but then ultimately we are the ones who define success for ourselves and nobody else. The moment we realize that, I think all of these what we discussed today feels like it's in place.
Absolutely.
Right.
You're so very right.
Yeah. Thank
Mhm.
you very much, Mr. Surya. It's been a great learning experience for me in this 1 hour, and I look forward to having more such conversations and more such learnings from you.
Sure. I enjoyed this conversation with you, Shruti. I think definitely there are a lot of synergies that we have, and enjoyed this conversation. Yes, I would look forward to continuing this dialogue